hi everybody, welcome to June's edition of Working in Sustainable Technology. And today we are looking at the topic of carbon removal. Carbon removal is a hugely important part of the fight against climate change. According to some research by MIT that I was reading before I came on this call, in order to cancel out our carbon emissions according to today's standards and today's emissions, we would need to capture and store over 20 billion tonnes of carbon dioxide a year, which is phenomenal. So the amount of investment, the pace of development, the pace of change that needs to happen in the world of carbon removals is huge. It's unprecedented, the scale at which we need to develop this technology and deploy it, right? So it's a hugely fascinating topic. And today we are joined by two people working at the forefront of that space, Maarten van Roon from Carbonate and Ben Todd from Undo. So with no further ado, Ben, would you like to speak to us about your journey into this space, what Undo are working on, and the type of people you hire and have in your teams?
Certainly. Thanks so much, Cherry, and thanks for having me back on the program.
Yes, I should know, this is not your first rodeo.
It's good to be back. Yes. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Todd. I work in PR and marketing for Undo. Undo is a UK-based climate tech company. It's based in London with operational and scientific headquarters in Scotland. We are spread across 3 continents, Australia, Canada, and the UK. We have a goal of removing over 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide. That is our mission. And as Cherry says, this is a space that is very nascent, still in development, a lot of moving targets with methodology development for particular methods of removal. And it needs to be scaled up quickly in order to keep the planet livable for future generations. So no, this is obviously a big problem that a lot of climate people are trying to tackle and needs to be scaled quickly. A little bit about me before I talk more in depth and share slides about Undo. I have always wanted to work in the climate transition space, but didn't arrive in the space until about a year ago. I've got an international relations and geography background. Just goes to show that despite doing something completely different, that you can make the leap at any point in your career to a space like this. After graduating from university back in the States, I did some volunteer work in West Africa for a couple of years, and then I went back to the States to find my first job in marketing and PR for a government agency that does centralized procurement. So a lot of government contracting, quite boring. Though stable, it was not stimulating. I met my partner there, and she wanted to do business school in France. So we made the voyage over to Europe, got established there. After her business school year, she got a job offer in London. We made the trip over to London after that. And she was working for a climate tech company as well, and inspired me to finally make the leap over to climate intentionally. And I just cut off all ties with my US government work and said, all right, now we're going to consciously focus on making the transition and strategically, despite being in a new sector that I didn't know as well, and a new environment, new culture, just gathering all the information, scoping out the ecosystem, and making the intentional switch strategically over the course of several months to finally get a couple of job offers, both in the carbon removal space, actually, despite that not being my primary target. So I'm happy to, especially in the breakout rooms, go into more detail about my strategies for finding a climate tech job. I did happen to transfer over my skills that I learned in the PR marketing space to what I'm doing now. But again, I had no idea what enhanced rock weathering was. I had no idea what scale we needed and the importance of carbon removal in the climate tech context until I actually got the job offer and got stuck in to Undo. So with that being said, so Undo is now 2. We were founded in 2022, and you are catching us on our 2nd birthday. So very exciting moment for us. We are excitingly also in the midst of preparing for a visit from Elon Musk's Musk Foundation, because we are in the top 20 of the X Prize carbon removal competition. There are 5 or 6 ERW developers within that final 20, so that's super exciting. We are in the midst of getting certified to have verified carbon credits, which is our business model, so selling verified carbon credits to the voluntary carbon market. And obviously, we are scaling up operations abroad and at home in partnership with many off-takers, including Microsoft, Stripe, McLaren, and other big businesses looking to reach their net zero targets. We are made up of 50 plus experts across many different spaces: finance, tech, ops, brand, etc. So I very much encourage you, despite if you think you have no potential expertise within the climate space or climate tech space at this moment, I very much guarantee you that there is a place for you, and there are many job resources, both job boards, local climate meetups, et cetera, or international communities that you can connect with to get plugged into this space. And regardless of what your background is, there is a place for you in climate transition and green jobs, no question. Let's see. I want to talk to you a little bit more about how enhanced rock weathering works. So we'll go through a bit, hopefully with the visual here in a second, so it makes a bit more sense. We are accelerating a natural process at Undo of rock weathering. This is a process that already captures 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide naturally every year. But in enhancing this process, we have the potential to scale that up to 4 billion tons every year. Natural rock weathering happens on geological timescales. We obviously don't have geological timescales to make that transition. So we are trying to put that on human timescales by crushing up rock, spreading the reactive surface area out, and by doing so, accelerating greatly this process. How it actually works, and with the visual in a second, it'll make more sense, is we have carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, an excess of it that we're trying to bring back down to Earth and sequester underground or in other natural carbon sinks. That carbon dioxide combines with rainfall. When it falls on agricultural land where we spread out our crushed rock, it reacts with this rock on the surface. And in doing so, it gets transformed. There's a chemical reaction that takes place called carbonic acid weathering. And then it creates bicarbonates as chemical products that sequester the carbon in a solid form that dissolves through the soil column into riverways and ultimately into oceans where it is permanently sequestered. Now, the great thing is there's double benefit here. There's carbon dioxide sequestration, but there's also beneficial products in the rock, nutrient-rich rock, that in this powder, when it breaks down, there's calcium, magnesium, molybdenum, phosphorus, other great nutrients that leach into the soils, and leach into the soils in the best way possible, because this increases soil pH for farmers. This increases nutrient uptake and potentially increases crop yields. So this is why we spread it out on agricultural land at scale to help farmers and rural communities improve their bottom lines and get this rock on the grounds for free, which we provide free of charge to them, to hopefully improve their bottom lines and decrease their input costs, because they're spending money on expensive lime, fertilizers, and other products. And we know that margins are very tight in the farming communities across the world. So enabling rural, permanent, community-based carbon removal is sort of our tagline. And here's the visual I was mentioning before. So you see carbon dioxide up in the sky, combines with rainwater, comes back down. It's a carbonic acid that falls down, hits the rocks on the ground, which is spread out, increasing the reactive surface area, works its way down the soil column into riverways and ocean, and then ultimately oceans, where it's stored on a solid basis. There's also the end benefit once these bicarbonates reach the oceans, that marine life can take advantage of the bicarbonate and forming calcium carbonate shells. So there's a biodiversity benefit towards the end there. Conscious that I've already taken up a lot of time with the screen sharing mess. So let's continue on. We'll go to the next slide there, Sherry. This is Undo's impact to date. We've already spread 200,000 tons of silica rock, whether that be basalt here in the UK or willastonite in Canada. So like I said, for farmers, land is really their livelihood. We're improving their land. We're capturing carbon dioxide, and we're trying to quantify our benefits by gathering data, both for the co-benefits, how much we're increasing crop yields, soil pH increases, et cetera, and showing that positive impact. Recently, we published our first peer-reviewed paper in partnership with Newcastle University about the agronomic benefits that we are seeing of our basalt rock. So very excited to be sharing these benefits free of charge with local farmers in the UK and around the world. All right, we'll move on to the next slide. So I want to take you just through a couple of the verticals of the business, starting with science. If you have a scientific background, whether that be in geology, chemistry, geochemistry, et cetera, there's definitely a space for you in our business. Agronomy, project management and science. There's just so many different places that need tackling. And ultimately, Undo is a massive logistics operation. We're trying to take existing byproduct from quarries and mines, contract the transportation of that out to farms, work with agronomists and farmers to increase their crop yields. So we need to take baseline measurements, and we need field techs to carry out those operations, and we need project managers sorting out the logistics of this entire operation. It's notable that in Undo, our science team is by far our biggest team, and sorting out the measurement, reporting, and verification approach for enhanced rock weathering is the biggest barrier to scaling at this point, because without known quantification and reducing uncertainties, it's difficult to be selling verified carbon removal. So I can talk more to the science, maybe in a breakout session if people would like to know more, but let's move on. This next slide, just wanted to show our scale at this point. We have many international partners. Importantly, we are partnering with academic institutions wherever we're operating. So we've got partners in Australia, many here in the UK, and of course we're scaling up in Canada as well, especially Eastern Canada. So despite just only turning 2 now, we have many years of academic research under our belt, and many experts, both in academia and the science field, aiding us along the way. And we'll move on to the tech slide. Obviously, we are a climate tech company, but I think ironically enough, and this is partly what I was hired to do, is we need to elevate our technology. We are a climate tech company. We need to own that, and we need to feature our technology more heavily. What you're seeing on the screen here is a GPS track spreading event that feeds back data to our geochemical models and our proprietary data platform, Newton. Through this, we can produce auditable, verifiable carbon credits. And we have also hardware that gets deployed into our spreaders that shares, our entire life cycle analysis data. That's anything from how much fuel are we using, where exactly have we spread, when did we spread it. So this again creates an audit trail back to every single carbon credit that's generated to prove the value that we're bringing and the credits that we're generating to the voluntary carbon market. And we'll end on this summary slide. We are producing durable, high-quality carbon credits that there's a lot of soil benefits. Obviously, carbon capture is the name of the game here. That is our ultimate mission. As Cherry said, we need to be removing tens of gigatons by 2050 in order to meet net zero targets and keep the planet below 2 degrees average Celsius warming. It's going to be a tough challenge. It's going to be a very collective effort. It's going to need, it scales more of an investment. But it's an exciting and very stimulating industry to work on, especially if you are in a startup space, moving at the speed of light, trying to do everything everywhere all at once. But I would love to talk to you more about all the different opportunities we have, specifically within Undo, whether you're, again, finance, tech, science, carbon accounting, marketeer, communicator, logistics guru, whatever you may be. Again, that's the takeaway message that I want you all to have here. There's a space for you in the carbon dioxide removal space. So I'll end on that for now, and look forward to talking more in the breakout session.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was brilliant. And yeah, it's lovely to hear that message resonated again, that you don't have to be from a scientific background to enter this space, as you weren't, and that there's a home for everybody. But yeah, fascinating to hear the work Undo's doing, and so much impact in just 2 years. It's amazing. And yeah, I heard someone recently say the pace of change that we need to have in the carbon removal space is steeper and greater than the Industrial Revolution. So there you go, just to put it into perspective, that's significant. Maarten, are you happy to join us? I believe Erin has a copy of your slides if you can't share them, but have a go and then see.
Good morning, good afternoon, I suppose wherever you are. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Maarten van Roon. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Carbonate. By Chief Commercial Officer, my remit spans the sales, business development, the marketing, product management, and the carbon function that we have within our business. I've been here for just over 3 years, and I have a background originally, which is, I think, the other flip side of the medallion, or what some may call the dark side. I actually spent the first 16 years of my career in oil and gas. So I spent the first 16 years of my career there, and I suppose I'm now taking my shot at redemption, as some of my family members humor me with. But I have a background in business, and I have built different businesses in specialty commodities around the world, and have also been heavily involved towards the latter stages of my career in oil and gas, in the commodities trading of the VCM market, so the voluntary carbon market, and as a result became, I think, increasingly interested and more exposed to dealing with startups in the field. So much to an extent where I had a change of heart during the COVID period. And decided to join Carbonate. So probably going from what was one of the biggest companies in the world to probably one of the smallest companies in the world. Massive amount of change, but really pleased. Probably one of the best choices I've made. And I'm happy to talk to you today for a few minutes about what Carbonate is and what Carbonate does. So I think indeed, and I think Ben put it well, and so did Cherry. The world needs a lot of carbon removal and a lot of carbon avoidance over the coming decades in order to ensure that the world temperatures don't rise beyond certain levels. Carbonate's ambition in that is to contribute to that with carbon removal and carbon avoidance. All right, here we go. Fantastic. Yeah, let's go straight away to the second slide. So Carbonate is what we call ourselves, or we like to call ourselves, a circular impact company. And essentially what Carbonate is it is a technology that allows for the permanent sequestration of carbon dioxide into different minerals. And the minerals typically that we try to intervene with are wastes, and wastes from heavy industry. So you're thinking really about steel, about cement, about energy from waste, around biomass plants. All of these plants, when they create energy for themselves, because typically they're very energy hungry, and they produce residues in the form of typically ashes is probably the easiest way to visualize them. And these ashes represent both a constraint on the ecological environment, and in the sense that they have to be landfilled. They're also very expensive for clients, meanwhile, to landfill and get rid of, really in the sense that there's an increasingly heavy amount of government taxation and regulation on the fields of waste management. Next to that, those sites from burning different types of fuels also create emissions. So if you think about the cement industry alone, I think the cement industry by itself is responsible for something like 8% of global GHG emissions. And so what we have is a technology where we can bring together their emissions from either their flue stack, so their chimney, or from an external bottled source, and we can permanently sequester that carbon dioxide into the waste that they produce. And the way that we do that is through our own innovation called the container, which houses Carbonate's technology. And that's the picture you see there in the middle. That's an actual picture of the container being deployed at a cement works in France, where we sequester the carbon dioxide directly from their flue stack into the residues they have. And the really cool thing that happens then is that by conducting that process and by conducting ACT, we create a new granule. And that granule is the picture that you see on the right. And the easiest way to imagine it is really a building aggregate. And that is essentially a circular product with a negative carbon footprint that you can use again for a whole host of new applications. So it can be used as an ingredient for a drop-in solution to making bricks, for example. And we've done some really cool work with some block makers who are now starting to make carbon negative blocks that you can build houses with or other structures with. We looked at things like sea defense structures, pavers. So there's lots of different applications we can use these materials in. So in a nutshell, it's a fully circular solution where we combine ash and CO2 emissions, and we make a new circular building product. So if we go to the next slide, it blows that up a little bit bigger, that picture, and some of the capability that it has. Where it really features in terms of carbon avoidance and carbon removal. And if we take, for example, a biogenic stream of CO2, then we are in the carbon removal space because we are essentially hacking the natural cycle of carbon. And so we're into CDRs. And the great thing here is that with engineered tech, such as the product that we have, is you can measure a lot of data. So we can measure exactly how much CO2 is coming into a system. We can measure exactly how much CO2 is being sequestered, and we can create a fully transparent data repository, essentially indicating in a very foolproof, clear, transparent, and honest way exactly where every ounce of carbon, if you will, that we have sequestered has come from, especially when those translate to, for example, products in the voluntary carbon market. On the subject of the voluntary market, that's one of the outputs. And if we go to the next slide, I think it pictures that quite well. So here on the left, as I described before, so you have these two liabilities for hard-to-abate industry. On the one hand side, you have these residues, and on the other hand side, you have the emissions that are generated as a result of combusting feedstocks that create those residues. We turn those into three different things and assets, as we like to call them. One is the conversion of that waste, and that means, you know, economic savings and ecological savings. A low carbon product for the built environment, such as the one I've just touched on, and then the carbon credit aspect for the VCM market, which we talked about below. And if I dig into the last one a little bit more, so we've undergone an 18-month journey to have our entire process accredited for the voluntary carbon market, and we meanwhile have a methodology that approves entirely what we do. We are in the process of starting to market and sell those credits as well via different platforms, but also different customers, such as the one that Ben touched upon before in the tech space. If we move one slide on, we see here, this is what that building product looks like. We call it Circa Build to give it that sort of circular aspect. And it has a whole host of applications and also a whole host of features which make it interesting and in some cases have a stronger performance even than some of the natural building products or some of the virgin feedstocks that it can replace. So if we go to the next and final slide, which we have here in terms of what it is that we do, we provide cost savings for clients, in the sense that we have this waste which is diverted away from landfills. We reduce the carbon footprint of the client where we intervene by capturing their CO2 and permanently sequestering it. And we create this new circular material with a negative carbon footprint that you can use in building products. And what we like to try and do, and what we're headed towards, is really trying to look at the built environment for the future, and whether that's houses, structures, etc., really has an enormous potential to become a carbon sink for the future. So a place where in the products that we use to make those structures, we essentially have embodied carbon, and so that we start storing some of the carbon that we produce in those structures and use the built environment as a carbon sink. Yeah, I think that's the conclusion to what we do.
Fantastic. That's brilliant, Maarten. So interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the fact that, you know, not only are you capturing the carbon, but then using it
Yes.
to create greener materials, making that full closed loop is brilliant.